Hello, everyone. Welcome to the KPI Practitioner Pod, where I get the chance to speak with some of the best coaches, consultants, and thought leaders that use the key polarity indicator, a self and 360 sense-making tool to help people, leaders, and organizations make sense of the polarized world we live in today. In this episode, I had the opportunity to speak with Anne Nagle. Anne is a consultant and coach for the organization Cultivating Leadership and a close colleague of mine. I hope you enjoy the episode. Thanks. All righty. So, Anne, tell me, why did you want to become certified in the key polarity indicator?
Well, cool. For me, I knew about polarities for a while and had worked with them in a room with people like mapping polarities and that, and then found that to be very useful, to teach people what a polarity is and how to work with them and to open up a conversation. And then when I first got exposed to the KPI was when I was doing the polarity certification with Kelly and Brian in Georgetown. And, the richness of being able to have an assessment, whether it's self or 360, of, a number of polarities, like what your own leaning is. And also, I think what the KPI does is it sets out what the impact of those leanings might be. So when you think about the wheel, and I know people will be exposed to this or you'll give them resources on this. So when you think about the wheel, for example, in the human KPI, which for me was kind of really interesting, you've got these ideas of, well, what are we about as human beings? We're about, in search of peace, belonging, and impact. So these kind of three broad kind of organizing principles we have as human beings. And to understand not just, for example, for me, it's like I lean into responsibility more so than forgiveness. But this idea of like, how does it all stack up? All of my preferences or some of my preferences all stack up. And there was a real sense of in seeing what the KPI can give you as a kind of an explanation almost of some of what might be going on for you. So there's a way in which it helped me see and maybe unlock some things for myself. So that's kind of the why.
That's awesome. So then I'd follow that up with saying, when it comes to working with clients, what have you seen to be, the biggest impact when using the KPI or understanding polarities overall, maybe not just the KPI?
Yeah, I suppose one thing I didn't say in respect to the last questions of why get certified, for me, why get certified is around, you get to learn a lot about yourself and a lot about the process when you actually have to go through not just learning and kind of acquiring learning in the usual way, but to actually go through a certification process, kind of has a rigor to it, which is really helpful. In terms of polarities with clients, I don't know about you, but so often when you start kind of mirroring a polarity back to somebody, it's like they see something that they couldn't see before, like this idea that this strength that I've relied on all my life, that I could be overusing it in some way, or that I could have a complete allergy to something, but really only know something by its overuses. There's just light bulbs go on every time I'm in a polarity conversation with people. So in terms of the KPI, there are three layouts available, as you know, like there's the kind of overall layout of, which sometimes can be useful, but sometimes it doesn't sort of pop at that stage for people. But when you look at individual polarities and people start to see, yeah, I'm getting all the benefits of this, and I'm also overusing it. And on this other side, there's not a lot happening. Like I don't have a good relationship with this other pole at all. I'm not really occupying it or experiencing it in any way. The visual is just so helpful for people to actually see, I think, as well. And then what's super useful about the KPI is that in that visual, you can start to see the questions that you are answering and the scores you give, and therefore the places that you might look to actually move the dial a little bit. So you already have a sort of a cheat sheet on the data, if you like, that helps you think about how you might actually do some work on this if work is needed.
Absolutely. And when I hear you say that, I always refer back to one of the things Kelly says about it often. And it's like, it's a cheat sheet, but it's also not going to label you in the sense that there are a good amount of tools out there that say you are, not saying any names, but there are tools that say you're 4 letters, like these are your 4 letters, these are who you are. It doesn't identify you. It allows you to get to a level of identity without labeling you, essentially, which is like something that's super powerful too.
Which I think is so true. And on the other hand, it also, in the conversation, you often find that you have your own labels.
Yeah, exactly.
About these things that are not necessarily the labels on the polarity, but it's like, for me, if I take the polarity of responsibility and forgiveness, which I've always found fascinating on the human KPI. I mean, I could have told you for a long, long time, like, responsibility is my thing. Like, I learned to take responsibility at a young age, et cetera, et cetera. But my relationship with the other side, with its opposite, like, is really like, it would be sort of a getting away with it kind of thing, like a loose standard, so the forgiveness for me is letting yourself off the hook, for example. Forgiveness is could be seen as unreliable, so in my not looking at it as a polarity, but living it would be, well, you can be the responsible or you can be unreliable.
Yeah, exactly.
And not seeing unreliable as an overuse of forgiveness. So the idea that there was goodness on the other side kind of missed me, for a long, long time. So, so there's a way in which I totally agree with Kelly's perspective in terms of the labels are neutral of a polarity, but the way you might know a thing that's a polarity, if you have a very strong leaning on one side, might be because you have sort of a goodness label for one side and a badness label for the other side in some way.
Oh my goodness, you're like speaking my language right now. My big one is take seriously, hold lightly. And for the longest time before I knew, I didn't even call it holding lightly. I just thought, if you weren't taking things seriously, you were just being lazy. So I was like, I had such an aversion to the other side, and that ability to realize like the goodness in the other side is just like, that's where the real light bulb is for a lot of people, and for me personally too. So I totally get that.
Yeah. Good.
Awesome. Well, I guess, is there anything else you'd want to add? Anything else you find valuable about the KPI? Anything you'd like to share? And if there is or isn't, it's no big deal.
Well, I think there are a few things. One is obviously doing the self-assessment. You get a sense of getting a view back at you, or a set of layouts back at you that are super helpful for you to actually see where you land on particular polarities. The 360 is just so helpful. Like, I did the human KPI 360, whatever, two years ago. And, despite all the work that I do, my level of self-awareness, I would say, is good, but actually it's not good. Like, when you get 360. So, I mean, like any 360, the KPI is no different in one sense. You just get a perspective from the view of others. But it was super helpful for me to see things like, well, how did my clients see me in terms of the polarity of, for example, self and other, because there's a way in which, if you're serving clients, there's a way in which you can kind of hope that they don't think of you as self-centered or just centered in your organization. On the other hand, you don't want them to see you necessarily as completely over supporting their needs. So it's really interesting to sort of get some of those perspectives of other evaluator groups across your different polarities to see, am I showing up differently to different people? Might they have different expectations of me? And what can I learn along those ways? So the 360 is just super helpful. I just thought there was so much in that. And the other thing then I would say about the KPI is I've used it with 40 something people from one organization, and then debriefed it with them in smaller groups. So that was actually really helpful for people to actually meet people who had opposite preferences to theirs. So you can't organize it that way, but it's just really helpful for people to actually hear the stories of others that might have an opposite leaning to them, because again, it opens up perspective taking. So doing these type of assessments and using KPI in the context of other people and groups of people can be really, really helpful in terms of opening up conversation and, opening up a window to diversity actually as well, as well as multiple perspectives.
Yeah, absolutely. That is one of the things that we found too, is the ability to provide a little bit of a lens for DEI has been super powerful in some of our workings with certain clients that have, that on the roadmap, or that's one of their initiatives they want to really explore. We've used that and seen some real solid success with that. And the storytelling and the perspectives, super impactful.
Yeah. My favorite thing to do when I'm working with polarities and the KPI is, when I see strong leanings, is to have people do a biography, like tell the story of your preferred diagonal, like what's your relationship with these words, what's your relationship with these things. And it's really, it's a very vulnerable place for people, but it's just, sometimes people are just externalizing something that they've never really sort of talked about up to now. It just is, it's been the water that they swam in, until now. So I think it just enables really rich conversations with yourself actually, as well as with other people.
Absolutely. That is awesome. All righty. Well, if that is that, I mean, this has been a great conversation, and we appreciate all of your support as always. And if there's anything else you'd like to add, I mean, we can talk more, but I am good if you are good. This has been awesome.
I'm good. Yeah, I hope it's useful to you. And if it's not, then so be it. You can discard.
No, absolutely. This has been super awesome. This has been great. And the people, I think, are really going to love this. And I think your answers and your insight is just super valuable. So I thank you dearly.
Thank you, my dear. Thank you, my dear.
All righty, Anne. Thank you so much.
You have a good rest of day and rest of week. And let me know if you, for any reason, need to do this again or anything like that. Feel free.
Awesome. We'll do, Anne. And I'll be in touch once it's more finalized, and I get our editor to put a little bit of a nice touch on it, a little bit of like KPI imagery or something. We'll see what we can do to make it look super, super clean.
Yeah. Take care. Thanks so much. Okay, bye. Happy New Year.
Same to you. Bye-bye.